जरूरी होता है कि साल भर बच्चे जो भी पढ़ते हैं उसके अलावा कुछ एक्सपर्ट जो रहते हैं उनका अगर गाइडेंस बच्चों को मिल जाएगा तो उनका डेफिनेटली बच्चों को बहुत अच्छे से फायदा होता है। इसीलिए हम क्रैश कोर्स सीरीज रखते हैं। उसके द्वारा हम जो भी कोई एक्सपर्ट्स है उनकी वहां से राय लेते हैं कि बच्चे किस तरह से पढ़े, उनको एग्जाम में किस तरह से क्वेश्चंस आ सकते हैं, कौन सा सिलेबस है, उस पे कौन से इम्पोर्टेंस है, अच्छी तरह से पढ़ सकते हैं। इसलिए हमने क्रैश कोर्स सीरीज स्टार्ट की है। तो आज हमारे जो पर्सन है वो है विभा सिंह मैडम। विभा सिंह मैडम के बारे में बताया जाए तो वो जनरलिस्ट विजिटिंग फैकल्टी बीएमएम एमएससीजी एंड एमएपीआर मुंबई यूनिवर्सिटी में है। उसी तरह से मैडम एक सोशल वर्कर भी है। उसी तरह से वो एक डायरेक्टर है, डायरेक्टर वुमन एजेंसी साइबर एप्टस फाउंडेशन में है। उसी तरह से मैडम नेशनल साइबर सेफ्टी एंड सिक्योरिटी स्टैंडर्ड की मेंबर भी है। उसी तरह से मैडम चाइल्ड लाइन एंड फाइट एजेंट चाइल्ड एडवोकेसी की सर्टिफिकेट ट्रेनर भी है। उसी तरह से मैडम ने और सारे इसका एक्सपीरियंस मैडम को है जर्नलिज्म का। उसी तरह से उसका जो फायदा है वो बच्चों को होने वाला है। बच्चों को मैडम बताएगी कि किस तरह से एग्जाम में हम लोगों को क्वेश्चंस आएंगे, किसी तरह से बच्चे उसकी पढ़ाई कर सकेंगे और कम समय में जो बच्चे जॉब वगैरह करते हैं वो कम समय में किस तरह से पढ़ के अपना इस फायदा ले सकते हैं और एग्जाम में अच्छी तरह से मार्क्स ला सकते हैं। तो मैडम से कहूंगी कि मैडम आपका जो भी नॉलेज है वो बच्चों को अच्छी तरह से उनका फायदा होगा और बच्चे अच्छे से अच्छा उनका फायदा उठाएंगे। इसलिए मैडम से मैं रिक्वेस्ट करूंगी कि मैडम आप बताइए। आज मैडम जो सब्जेक्ट बताने वाली वो है मैगजीन जर्नलिज्म। जर्नलिज्म का एक अच्छा सब्जेक्ट है मैगजीन जर्नलिज्म, जो एक शॉर्ट टर्म में भी अगर मैडम एक्सप्लेन करेगी तो बच्चे अच्छे से अच्छा वो लिख सकते हैं। मैडम प्लीज स्टार्ट।
Sure. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Okay,
and thank
madam.
you everyone in your college for inviting me for this thing.
हाँ, ओके मैडम।
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the session on magazine journalism. As ma'am said, it's a crash course series and we are going to get prepared for the examination. So keeping in view the examination, it's a very simple thing. Your examination pattern, you've been giving exams. Last exam which people gave on this paper was an MCQ, but now this paper is going to be a descriptive paper. So your understanding of this paper has to be now descriptive. That basic thing of MCQ is gone now. So when you are going to attempt this paper, you have to understand very well, first thing, what is happening in the industry, because that is the key. Because after the digital revolution, all journalism as such has changed majorly. First, I'll explain you what is journalism. If you understand journalism, आपको समझ में आता है पत्रकारिता क्या है, तभी आपको समझ में आएगा मैगजीन जर्नलिज्म क्या है। अगर हम जर्नलिज्म की बात करते हैं तो इसकी एक सिंपल डेफिनेशन है, इट्स अ बेसिक एक्टिविटी ऑफ रिपोर्टिंग द न्यूज टू एन ऑडियंस। आप हम क्या करते हैं, पब्लिक के लिए हम लोग न्यूज इकट्ठी करते हैं एंड दैट न्यूज जिसको बोलते हैं, जो मीडिया में डिफरेंट मीडिया जो आज की डेट में हमारे पास, पहले पुराने जमाने में दो तरह के मीडिया थे, प्रिंट मीडिया और हमारे पास टेलीविजन मीडिया था, जो नॉर्मली वी यूज्ड टू बी एक्सेसिंग, एवरीबॉडी यूज्ड टू बी या तो वो पढ़ते थे या फिर न्यूज टेलीविजन पे देखते थे। फिर gradually with digital revolution, now we are online. We are watching news everywhere. We're watching news on our tablets. We're watching on our mobiles. We are watching on our desktops. So the scenario has changed. The scenario, whenever you now, when you are studying journalism, you can't just study journalism in one thing that okay, yeah, print, newspaper hai, magazine hai. Everything has changed now. Newspaper has become e-paper, magazines have become e-magazines. So the trend has changed, opportunities have increased, your presentation has changed. So while keeping in that view, a very simple definition is of journalism, the activity of reporting the news to the audience, where if you look at the different media, which I said is print media, television, and the internet. So when we are going to keep this in view, we are going to keep two things in mind when I'm teaching you this, when I'm actually talking about magazine journalism, is one, the print magazine, and one is the e-magazine. These days, you'll see most of the magazines have come online. Reason, because yeah, print has had a very bright future. If you look at it, the print magazines had a brilliant time, brilliant future. We used to love watching them when even on our newsstands, when you used to be standing on the newsstand and looking at what is the new there. The first thing which used to go on is the cover of a magazine. We never used to look at a newspaper. So, but there's a difference. There's a difference between a newspaper and a magazine. Magazine is also print journalism. Newspaper is also a print journalism. But in my newspaper, you get the current news, everyday news. It's in your hand every day. But the magazines are periodicals. If my magazines are a kind of a thing where you get them weekly, you get them monthly, depends on the periodicity. That's the difference between that. So when we talk about magazine, as exactly a simple definition of magazine is, a magazine is type of a print journalism. And gradually now a transition is happening into e-journalism, which is called the e-magazines. So magazine, when you define it, a magazine is a publication which contains various stories, photographs, beautiful. If you look at it, the cover pages, even if you look at the e-magazines also, the kind of pictures they have, they're lovely pictures they have. So a magazine is a publication which actually contains various stories, photographs, and magazines. They come weekly, they come periodically, they come monthly. So do remember this when you're writing the exam, in the question, when you're writing the answer, what is a magazine? Do define all these things. Do talk about e-magazines also, because now your answer is not only focused on print magazines only. So there are different types of magazines which are there, but magazine in journalism refer to magazines that print different kind of, it could be news stories, it could be specialty magazines. If you look at India Today, carried a big story on budget. Then you have film magazines. So magazine journalism as such, if you look at it, what it exactly is, if we talk about it, kya hai ye? When you read magazines, you'll see there's something which is related to facts, hard facts. आपकी cover story होगी एकदम hard fact, budget के ऊपर. There's something which is happening around with the Prime Minister Modi's government. There's news, G20 summit happening. The key areas, news along with the explanation will be there for you. So what happens is you get actually the hard facts. In a news, when you read in a newspaper, it is as simple as that. 5 W's and 1 H is given to you. What, when, where, how, that is covered in that. But when it comes to magazine, it goes beyond that. It goes beyond the history. It gives you the history. It gives you what exactly is happening. Opinion are allowed. In this case, so if you look at it in magazine, it is not personal opinion, which I said. What is allowed is a hint of opinion is allowed in that, which is not allowed in newspapers. There only you report the facts. It is not fiction also. Do remember this thing, because many times people, when they think about magazine writing, they think there's an element of fiction writing which we can use and we can go away with it. No, you can't. You need to give the facts also. A mix of fact and fiction, and then exactly opinion makes up your cover, makes up your any kind of story which you're writing. And then they're not moral essays also. Magazine if you read different kind of magazines, different genre of magazines, they may provide you a social commentary. They may provide you what is going on about any of the new things which are happening in the market. This is coming, or if they're talking about the environment, they'll give you more ideas. They'll give you more exactly what is happening with facts, reporters, your stats, everything will be there. So now we come to the part, do you know one very important thing? So magazine writing, when you write in the examination, when you write for the thing, is it's a work of fiction and hard news reporting. Yeah, definitely it is, but it is between both of them. You have imaginations when you start your story. When you write your magazine article, you actually have anecdotes. You write about the past. You write about somebody's story, somebody who suffered the thing. If you're writing a story on rape, then you actually narrate an incident about it. So the magazine articles can have all the things which can include, which means entertainment value of a fiction, where you can have a plot, you can have a scene, you can have a character, you can have a description that moves the story. That actually magazine stories, because magazine stories are normally, if you look at it, they are a magazine normally these days, it's a 60-pager thing. So in that, the stories are divided. So if you're writing a story, whatever amount thing is there, the word limit is 1,000 to 1,500 words. So in 1,000 to 15 words, you need to explain the whole story, keeping in view lots of factors. And the magazine journalists, what they do, they make the story interesting. They make the story topical. Topical means current. What is happening at present? Maybe you're writing a story on we are talking about an old issue, but how is this issue relevant in present scenario is also looked upon it. COVID, when we were facing, we all were in lockdown. That was a different kind of COVID. Again, we are talking about the COVID thing. It's again coming up gradual. We are not seeing the same kind of intensity, but COVID is there. So now, when you talk about COVID in present scenario, what is the government doing? We haven't stopped down. We are walking on the streets. Lockdown is not happening, but every day we are seeing cases in Mumbai, we are seeing cases in Delhi. So we will be doing stories in our print media on the magazine, but now the angle will change. What we are going to make it more topical. Now we are going to talk about what is happening today. What are the limitations? What are the things the health ministry is taking into account? So known as what exactly is magazine journalism? Known as creative non-fiction, and some believe magazine writing to be the highest form of journalism, and that is very true, because many times people who are not able to read the newspaper, people who don't read newspaper as such, they actually prefer the magazine. So when we say etymology of magazine, where did this word come from? What is the structure of this word? This word, if you look at it, this word came into dictionary in 1580s. This was the first time it appeared in the English language. And that time it was actually used for the warehouses, which were placed for storing goods, military ammunition. And in this, the middle French word was magazine, which meant warehouse or the depot or a store. And the Italian word was magazzino, and Arabic magazine, which is a plural of magazine, which means a storehouse. We actually really use these terms today with these meanings. Gradually in 1868, this word actually got its real meaning. When we say magazine, it was called the cartridge chamber. In the repeating rifle, where you put in the chamber, and if the shots were done, this was taken from there. So it was in 1731 that magazines as a periodical journal, which was taken into account, which meant miscellaneous kind of writings, different kind of writings, where you put in lots of angles, you put in lots of stories, you put in lots of views, issues. That was now considered to be a magazine. So what is a magazine? Now we'll talk about what is exactly a magazine. We're talking, it's going on. It's like, it's a non-fiction. It is like this. But magazine क्या होता है? Magazine का word जो coin हुआ, exactly जो बना, वो बनाया Edward Cave ने. This word was actually, he came, brought into picture, and from there, which I told you, in the examination, if you are writing the question, please do mention these simple terms, because it gives more weightage when you write an examination. Where did it come from? Who coined the word? Edward Cave. Where it is derived from? Arabic word magazine. And this, which means a storehouse, that a magazine is a storehouse for a reader, a person who wants to get information. It means it is in a one package, you are getting everything. So the first English periodical magazine, if you look at it, was Gentleman magazine, which was founded in 1731. And the magazine actually contained lots of things. It contained essays, it contains poems, it had stories, it had political musings, lots of things were there. And if you look at it, yeah, magazines were also considered as periodicals, because definitely they had variety of articles, illustrations, photographs, which were entertaining, which were promotional, and which were also instructive in nature. These days you have DIY series, which you see on internet a lot. How do I do this? How do I drive a motorcycle? How do I drive a car? How to operate my iPhone? All these things were the ones which were carried by the magazines. So a simple definition, which was given by the Collins Dictionary, or you can actually check out, lots of dictionaries have given different meanings to this word magazine. Do write in the examination, do give in the examination these definitions. So I'll just give you one definition, which is Collins Dictionary definition, which says that a magazine is a publication with a paper cover, which is issued regularly, usually every week or every month, and which contains articles, stories, photographs, and advertisements. A very simple definition, which anybody can. So now let's understand what is a magazine. A magazine contains feature stories, which has been a word which has been again and again, when we define magazines, we talk about it. When you say newspaper, then the thing comes to your mouth is like mine is simple thing, news. That is north, east, west, and south. From everywhere you're getting this information. That is news, which is carried in the newspaper. When it comes to magazine, we only talk about features. Features is something which is descriptive, which is analytical, which analyzes more. So we have stories, you have poems, you have articles, you have fictions, you have recipes, you have images, and it's like a comprehensive, in-depth coverage of any subject, whether we are talking about the election, coming election 2024, the whole analysis is done. What happened in the past elections, what is in the future, what is going to happen, what is the strategy different parties are adopting, or if there's something which Congress is doing different for the coming elections, we do cover it in an elaborate way. The Path Yatra on which Rahul Gandhi went, Bharat Yatra, which we call it, that year, that was covered by many magazines because it was a new kind of a concept which they have picked up. Then if the Modi government is coming out with G20 summit, they are coming out with new programs focusing upon youth, then we cover them in deep, comparing them with the earlier plans and comparing now. So most of the magazines, if you look at it, they cover featured articles on various topics. And the topics are political, all your beats which you cover in the newspaper, they are also covered in your magazines also, whether it is business, whether it is political, whether it is crime, anything which you think as a beat is covered in the magazines also, whether it's sports, anything. So magazines, if you look at the periodicity, they are published weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, bi-monthly, and quarterly. And yeah, definitely the paper quality is looked at in a major way in this, because they are often printed in color on a coated paper and are bound with a soft cover. But that's the reason when we say the price is high, the price is high because of the print quality and the paper quality. In simple way, you can say the better the visual narrative of the magazine, the more it will appeal to a specific audience. More people, it means as simple as that जहाँ पर pictures अच्छी हैं, photographs अच्छी हैं, लोग उस magazine को ज़्यादा पसंद करते हैं. क्यों पसंद करते हैं? Because there's so many people who don't like to read the whole article. And a very common term which we use in journalism is one photo speak 1,000 words. And that is the reason magazines, the picture quality or the photo quality is incomparable. And like when I work for different magazines like Outlook, when I was working, my editor used to be very particular about the photo we are clicking. My photo editor and the photographer who used to be going with me on the different beats, he used to be very, I used to look at the angles he used to be taking, the kind of call, he used to be very particular about even the sunlight. He used to be very particular about if you're taking a shoot at night, so this is what is the difference between a newspapers, random pictures that even were picked up, or when we take up events picture, it is like basic pictures we take up. But then it is a very important thing when you look at the illustrations also in magazines. The illustrations, the graphics, are done, the quality is very, very good. So the publisher's purpose when we say of the magazine is to give basically advertisers a chance to share, because nobody will buy a product. See, why will somebody buy a product if it is not good? So the publishers have to create a product. And when you're selling something for 100 rupees, nowadays the magazines come for 200 rupees also. So if you have to sell a product which is 100 rupees, 200 rupees, definitely the quality has to be different from what is being offered by a newspaper. So these are the people who are the stalwarts of the industry, which I've been talking about from ages. Arun Puri, Sanjay Sai, Khushwant Singh, and definitely Priyatana has been one of the best fashion, glamorous and a stylish editor also. While say Vogue India, she has been heading for a long time. And Arun Puri, all of us know very well, he's the one who has given India Today a face which is existing at today. So history of magazines, if you look at it, as I told you earlier also, 1700 was a phase when actually literacy and intellectual development came in. Because newspaper, everybody could read. But magazines, they required a different kind of people, different kind of intellectuals who actually wanted an in-depth study into the issue. So this hunger of knowledge, जिसको बोलते हैं हम लोग की, we wanted more. So that time, a class of people now wanted to read more, wanted to get more information. That was the reason the early periodicals, or what we say is the kind of magazines only the wealthy could afford. It was not for the masses as such. And that moment, the writing also was like that. It was focused on the learned people, the culture, the sophisticated individual of the day. So the magazines were being picked up by those people only. So the first magazine was reviewed in 1704, was written for 9 years by Daniel Defoe. So you can just keep this name, and it consists of 4 pages 3 times a week. In 1709, Tatler by Richard Steele was published. It was edited by a fictitious, the editor was not known, Isaac Bickerstaff. In 1711, Spectator by Joseph Addison was published. But it was the face of the magazine which came into picture was the Gentleman magazine, which actually ran uninterrupted from 1731 until 1922. ये एक ऐसी magazine थी gentlemen जिसको बोलना चाहिए for ages. हम लोगों ने भी, like when I joined Outlook, that time also my editor showed me this magazine and he said, follow this you should look at the old issues of this magazine. You will understand what exactly magazine means. And this actually, if you look at in Wikipedia also, they have actually mentioned that the Gentleman magazine was first published in 1731, and from gradually it was founded by Herbert Ingram in 1842, but gradually the changes came in. So a simple thing, when there's a question on history of magazine, you should talk about that these colorful sketches and illustration which contributed to the magazine sales in 1842. Herbert Ingram, just remember this name, very important name. He created the first illustrated magazine, which was called the Illustrated London News. And this had a lot of woodcut designs. Earlier, it was not, we didn't have all these kind of machineries which are existing. We had a very different kind of the wood thing which we used was used for a long time for printing. You could see those designs in that. So magazine actually became popular in, this is UK, the one which I told you was a UK thing, the London thing. In America, it was by the end of the 18th century. By the end of 18th century in America, there were nearly 100 magazines. And in India, the first magazine which was published by the British thing was Oriental Magazine or the Calcutta Amusement. That was in 1785 to 1886 is a period we had this magazine. But जिसको हम बोलते हैं ना हमारी first Indian magazine as such was the Week. It was formed in the year 1982 and is published by the Malayalam Maroma Company Limited from Kochi. Now it has based in everywhere. So this was the older edition of Illustrated London News, and this is the Indian magazine which you see. So now one is how it happened in London and UK and USA. Then came in when we talk about the eras, our history is divided into eras. So if we look at magazine journalism, the progressive era or the period when magazine journalism really flourished, that was a period from 1890s to 1920s. This was a period when mass circulation of magazines happened, and like there were hundreds of thousands of subscribers who were going off it. But this mark reached a million mark in the 1920s. But gradually, when the cover price was increased, or when there were less people, but then the cover price fell sharply, it came to 10 cents. Now the stories started, but the coverage of stories on corruption in politics, local government, big businesses, changes in the environment, everything now started being disturbed. But how did magazine also came into with the common people? It became this thing was investigative journalism. Investigative journalism brought about a group of people who were called muckrakers. They were journalists who wrote for popular magazines. They were exposing the social scandals. They were exposing the political scandals. They were actually doing lots of stories on the health issues which were existing. And from there started a new series of magazine journalism, which was more investigative stories, more stories which were in-depth stories. Then a very important for us is the women magazines, because these are the kind of magazines which have changed the genre of journalism, because from there, here came in the beauty, here came in what we say is a family, here came in something which was me kind of a thing, mere liye kya hai. So mere liye came in with this thing where we had focused women magazine. In America, these were called the Seven Sisters of American Women magazines. And these Seven Sisters of Women magazines were the Ladies' Home Journal, Good Housekeeping, McCall's, Women Day, Red Book, Family Circle, and Better Homes and Gardens. And then there was this Harper Bazaar, which till long time was a magazine which dictated the whole industry. This actually focused on a species genre of fashion accessories, your textile, and it now not only included women in this thing, there was a broader audience for it because men also started following the fashion magazines now. With the fashion magazines, there came a trend in which is called the religion magazine. Which definitely which made a major difference, because religious groups, they were using these magazines for spreading and communicating any kind of religious doctrine for nearly 100 years. And the first magazine, which we call a religion thing, was a Friend, which was founded in Philadelphia in 1827. There was lots of issues about it later on because of lots of controversies. This was renamed as Friends Journal, and it was reconciled in the mid-1950s. So along with the religion magazine, there was some kind of magazine, business magazines, which took over the whole scenario as such. At present, business magazines are looked at by people for different this thing. So for a generic reader, a person who just wants to understand, the first American magazine was Andrew Broadford's American Magazine and Benjamin Franklin's Journal Magazine, which came out in 1741. The first magazine for young girls, the Young Mrs. Magazine, appeared in 1806. The first famous American women's magazine was Goody's Ladies Book, which was published in 1830. And then why this trend changed on? Because there were lots of improvements in the printing techniques. By 1890s, as well as increased use of advertising, changed everything. Time magazine, which came up in 1923, and Newsweek, which came up in 1933. These magazines actually were the ones which kept the trend of fast bringing the stories, keeping in view the fast changing world. In India, we saw a boom in the publication of magazine in India, not only in English but in Indian languages as well. Stardust was the first magazine which started the culture of film journalism in India. Before that, we did have magazines, which week, as I told you, it was a news magazine. India Today, which came in, which changed the whole trend of the designing, which actually was a weekly thing also. It brought in not only it focused on the upmarket people also, and a serious kind of journalism and a quality journalism. And then came in competition, the Outlook magazine. Now, at present in the market, if you look at it, we have both general interest magazine and we have the specialized magazines, which include your Outlook, which include your Frontline, your Femina, Company Success Review, Finita. There are lots of them. But the online version, along with the printed forms, they are taking up in a major way now. Now, what you will see is not only exactly these magazines, the old magazines which were existing. Now we have magazines which have come up on the online segment, which are not existing on the printing, but they have a very good presence on the online thing. But nobody can forget the Illustrated Weekly of India, because this was an English language weekly news magazine, which was founded in 1880s by the Times of India weekly edition, and was later named as the Illustrated Weekly of India in 1923. The publication closed down in 1993, but this was one step forward for all kind of, because this was a magazine which was a weekly thing and people used to love it. So some of the editors you should remember, because if you are studying magazines journalism, A.S. Raman, Khushwant Singh, M.V. Kamath, Pritish Nandi, these are some names we as journalists should be remembering always, because they are the people who guided us. These are people who made magazine journalism as such. A.S. Raman, if you look at it, was the first editor of the Illustrated Weekly of India, and not only pictures, not only the illustrations, but cartoons did make a major part of these magazines. Cartoons by R.K. Lakshman, Mario Miranda, please do watch them on, just Google them and you could just see one very simple thing, that these cartoons were the ones which were depicting the human, not in the Indian society, but world over, these cartoons were liked by people a lot. People were loving them, and the cartoons did make the many times they were the face of the magazine also. R.K. Lakshman cartoons were loved by people like majorly. So a magazine as a comprehensive thing has lots of things which you consider it. But now we'll discuss a simple thing. If the question comes, what is the difference between a magazine and a newspaper? So magazines, definitely, if you look at it, it's a book type of thing. If you people have studied your newspaper, magazine, and design paper, you must have been the sizes. There would have been a different size given for the broadsheet, given for tabloid, and given for a magazine. So magazine looks more like a book type of a thing. See, a very important thing in designing is the scanning. When you read a newspaper, it is told to you that focus on the left-hand side more, because the eye movement is from left to right. So similarly, but in a magazine, what we do is we scan the entire page. Without, if there's a fold, that's a different issue. But if there's a fold, we actually design the magazine keeping the fold into account. So magazines are smaller in size, they are more expensive, and newspapers definitely are bigger in size, and they're folded in a different way. So the front page comes up, and the page which comes up, that is the most important story. And the second part, where we talk about magazine and newspaper, is the content part. One is designing, the second is the content. Because in print industry, or even in the online thing also, design matters a lot. That is the first thing, because if you, your magazine or your newspaper, it's for both. It is not designed properly, it is not designed appropriately and according to the eye of a reader, then people don't pick up that. So content, in case of magazine, is focused on the specialized topics like the current issues of public interest. And magazines actually, normally you won't find that it's exactly a immediate fresh content. But even after there's a breaking news which has happened, we tend to cover that in more in-depth style. Newspaper, which I told you, 5 Ws and 1 H are clear, reports are clear, briefly, and they're more objective. And people do still, if somebody has to get the latest information, they do go to the newspaper. For the in-depth study, people go to the magazine. So when we talk about the style, in case of magazines, definitely we have more freedom to give our expressions, more freedom to give more material, that is subject. And even in a creative manner, which I told you, you can start it with a story, you can start it with an anecdote. There are lots of things you can use for the intro. But in newspaper, it is a headline which is very important, because that is one which creates the interest in the reader. And specialized people are they are reporters who go in the field, who bring in stories on a day-to-day event. Target audience, many these days the genre has been changing, but yeah, magazines were printed for a specific type of audience, like for automobile sector, if it's a magazine on auto, a specific type of audience, women, specific type of audience. Because nowadays, yeah, definitely when we are having journal magazines, they do attract different kind of readers, but the audience, targeted audience, used to be very clearly marked out by the marketing people. Yeah, this is the people we are going to target. So newspapers are written for general audience. Anybody picks up a newspaper, because in this case, the target audience is who will like it. In newspapers, it is according to the geography and the focus. If the Because any kind of news, you have studied news values. News values means what will be the reader interested in when we talk about the newspaper. In case of newspaper, it is when we talk about it, is like your proximity. आपके घर के पास हो रहा है, a celebrity है, the news is about a celebrity, it relates to you. All these factors are taken into account. In magazine, yeah, specific type of audience, women, business, magazines also. Journal magazines then carry information on every kind of genre. So now how magazines are classified, as well as explaining you, magazines are classified in terms of language: Hindi, English, Marathi, all Malayalam. So, and then there's a different genres of magazine, like they have their own main characteristics. It could be a journal. Journals are also kept in that field, but they are trade magazines which focus on the industry trends. Journal interest magazines are the ones which are the biggest showstoppers, as such, if we'll say. In case of journal magazines, if they are for the general audience, they have news on politics also, they'll have news on business also, they will have news on sports also, they will have news of environment, they'll have news about crime also. Whatever has happened in the week, and which needs more focus, or which needs more clarity for the public, journal interest magazines carry. Simplest examples are Times, Newsweek, Outlook, India Today, and The Week. And then comes in the special interest magazines, which are directed towards a specific group of readers. I love environment, so I love to go through Wanderers. I'll look for magazines which are giving me environment information. I love health things, so I'll go for a magazine which has more articles on health. This thing, women who love for cookery and all those things, they will go in for basically they'll look for magazines which have these, who will be covering more articles on cookery and all that. So these are some magazines which are actually special interest magazines, which you can look at it. The business magazines are Business Today, Forbes, The Economist. Please go on the internet and at least surf 3-4 websites of these magazines. It will give you a very good insight into the magazine and will give you very good examples to give in the examination. क्या है आपका examiner जब आपको judge करते हैं, they look at the quality of your answer also. And quality of the answer is जब आप ज्यादा information देते हैं जो आपका friend नहीं दे पा रहा है, or your classmate is not going to give. And how does it happen is, अगर question आता है, what is a business magazine? आपने ये तो लिख दिया कि business magazine is which caters to the information on stocks, which carries or business or budget. आपने सब कुछ लिखा, but आपने magazine का नाम ही नहीं mention किया. So if you do mention like this, if you like Outlook Business is a magazine which covers information on business, politics, or अगर आपने एक story भी mention कर दी कि okay, the recent issue of Outlook magazine had covered a story on budget 2023. एंड सीतारमन, और वो यू कैन जस्ट गिव अ कोट, जरूरी नहीं आपको पूरा एक्सप्लेन करना है, पर आपने अगर उस स्टोरी का थोड़ा सा भी जिस दिया, weightage, you get more weightage than the other people. So because what are you talking, you're talking about a business magazine, और आपको मालूम ही नहीं है कि कौन सी business magazine market में है, तो it doesn't make any sense. So do look at all these magazines. Sports magazine में Sports Star है, Cricket Today है, Runners World है, children's magazine में Champak, Disney Princess, which is not like, yeah, these days children are not reading so much, but definitely once upon a time children, we used to love reading them. Women magazines, Femina, Women's Era, there's a website nari.com which actually is a magazine, entertainment magazines, you have Stardust, Filmfare. So do look at some of these important magazines which are really going on. You can see the PDFs are available online. You can just go and type magazine PDF and you'll get thousands of PDFs of many magazines. Go through at least 7-8 magazines before you attempt your questions, because that will help you out majorly in understanding and writing your questions. So the main department in a magazine, if you look at it, how it operates, एक magazine का office में एक editorial department होता है. This editorial department is responsible for collecting your news, information, write-ups, analysis, editing articles, interviews, and more than a setup of a newspaper, magazine का editorial setup बहुत strong होता है. Because वहां पर काम it's like if one sub editor is editing one copy, it may take him 4 days also to edit a copy. Cover stories को कई बार 4 दिन 5 दिन edit किया जाता है, उनकी pictures जो है meticulously plan की जाती हैं. So editorial department is the strongest department of a magazine. Then if the editorial, whatever work they do, if they don't get good advertising, the magazine can't sustain. So advertising department actually deals with the client's advertising and the marketing department. Both of them work in tandem to sell the magazine. Advertising department brings in the ads, and marketing department these days are looking even into the PR exercises also. So the advertising departments, they deal with clients, agencies, media, advertisement, they sell space, everything. And then there's a designing studio, what we say, where the designing happens. Many times, because lots of events are promoted by the magazines, so your pictures, your colors, everything is taken into account. So now, who is responsible? Now, like in magazine, there's a owner, who is a publisher of the magazine. He's the one who is responsible for all the operations of the magazine. He is the one who strategizes, like he's the one who not does the story part, but the achievable goals of the magazine. He needs to, because he's the one who identifies the readers, his advertisers, and then whatever resources he has, from his personal experience, market research, current economic and business press, he takes into account that, yeah, this is what is needed. He is the one who is a primary mover of new products which can be developed. In Outlook magazine, we had wonderful people who were strategizing the magazine. And when when Outlook launched out, that time India Today had a very good market and India Today was standing very tall. That moment, Outlook had to work very hard on its advertising strategies, on the quality of the stories to make its place in the market. And a very simple story, which we have heard for long in Outlook magazine, was that actually the marketing people, they hired a helicopter and they threw magazines in Delhi on the rooftop of the people. This is some kind of new strategies everybody takes into account when they have to sell a magazine. Now, what is the importance of the role of the editor? Editor definitely plays a very, very, very important role, because if the editorial quality or the quality of the stories is not good, nobody will read your magazine. So he's the one who is responsible for coming out with the editorial pages, coming out with the kind of stories, analyzing the ideas given by the people who are the writers, columnists, everyone. And he's the one who has to keep in mind that whatever is being written should have a consistency with the pictures, consistency with the graphics, consistency with the illustration. Because if the reader is not satisfied, if the audience is not satisfied, then they are not going to buy it. And if you have to buy a product, definitely that product has to be quality wise very good. Online also these days, if you look at it, you go to a website and it doesn't have good pictures, it doesn't give you good content. These days the click is there. Earlier days, at least you had a physical thing in your hand, but these days, if you have to survive, the e-magazine has to survive, you will have to keep your reader hooked on your website for a long time. And then comes in the part, because the editor has to look at the overseas editorial direction also, the content of the magazine, because if you don't have good people working for your magazine, who even it could be an Indian magazine, but it doesn't have any the outlook is not like that. It could go for international genre, then people don't like it. So who are your audience? This is what is the first thing which is taught to a journalist in a magazine. Because if you don't know your audience, you won't be able to write your stories like that. Any kind of story does, you need to understand who is going to read it. Because if somebody and why do not exactly who is going to read it, why are they going to read it, क्यों पढ़ने वाला है वो मेरी स्टोरी को, और या मैं इंफॉर्मेशन जो देने वाला हूँ उसकी क्या मतलब है. सो आपको अपने ऑडियंस को, आपके जो आपको पढ़ने वाले, आपके जो रीडर्स हैं आपके, आपको उनको समझना बहुत जरूरी है. तो सबसे पहले उसमें जो थिंग्स वी कीप इनटू अकाउंट इज व्हाई डू दे रीड दिस पब्लिकेशन, या वो मेरी मैगजीन को क्यों पढ़ने वाले हैं. फॉर इंफॉर्मेशन, फॉर एंटरटेनमेंट, इंस्पिरेशन लेने के लिए, फॉर एस्पिरेशनल, दैट मीन्स द करियर पीपल, एजुकेशन के लिए, या टेक्निकल. All these things you have to keep in mind. So do remember this thing. If there's a question, what kind of readers or who are your audience for the magazine, do keep into account. Do write this, that people read magazines for information, for entertainment, for inspiration, for aspirational, and for educational and technical purposes. Now, who are these people? Now you have to look at the, when a survey is done by the marketing people, nowadays the editorial also sit with them. So when we do actually fill the Google form, we look in the Google form the age of the people, their economic status, their educational level, their ethnicity, their community affiliation, what gender do they belong to, what are their interests, what job are they doing, location, their political biases. So when we keep all these things in account, then comes into account what are the skills needed for you to collect all these things. अभी एक स्टोरी के लिए आपको क्या चाहिए, एक अच्छा रिपोर्टर, एक गुड एडिटर क्या होना चाहिए, और एक मैगजीन जर्नलिस्ट जो हम बोलते हैं उसमें क्या, फर्स्ट थिंग इज एक गुड मैगजीन जर्नलिस्ट शुड बी एबल टू अनकवर अ ग्रेट स्टोरी, report it accurately, because if you are not if you don't know the facts, you haven't covered understood those things, you need, one is collection of facts is very important, and you will collect facts only when you are able to communicate with people. आपको लोगों से बात करना आता होगा, आप जब लोगों को कन्विंस कर पाएंगे कि आप अगर उनके बारे में कोई स्टोरी लिख रहे हैं, वो you're not going to malign their reputation, or that story which you're doing on an individual or you're doing on any business, it's going to make a major change. Only then people will give you any information. So you have to be very particular about these things. And then when you're writing stories, definitely how can you empathize with people, आप कैसे उनसे बात करते हैं, ये एक स्पेशल स्किल है. एक जर्नलिस्ट के लिए सबसे बड़ा स्किल है आप कितनी जल्दी आप जिसका इंटरव्यू कर रहे हैं उसकी गुड बुक्स में आते हैं. Because see, nobody wants to give information, even like it's simple as that. अगर मैं आपको बोलूं कि चलिए मैं आपके बारे में आपकी बायोग्राफी लिखने वाली हूँ, अपने बारे में बताइए, आप मुझे अपना अच्छा ही बताएंगे, आप मुझे कुछ भी ऐसा नहीं बताएंगे जो आपकी लाइफ में, जिसको हम बोलना चाहिए ब्लैक स्टोरी होगी आपकी. अभी biographies are not, or if you're covering somebody and you're covering a celebrity, आपको उनके positives और negatives दोनों लिखने हैं, and that will only happen if you can convince him that you will, even if you're portraying his negatives, those negatives are not going to harm his reputation, because defamation is a major thing which journalists face quite often, because we don't understand what has to be written and what not are we allowed to write. Understanding is very important. So when you're writing for specialized magazines, you must be aware of the stories, because वो stories कैसे affect करने वाली हैं किसी के business को, किसी के personality को, किसी की reputation को. So and then एक question सबसे बड़ा, क्या मैं जो story कर रही हूँ ये मेरे readers को, will my readers be interested? क्या मेरा advertiser इसमें interested होगा? क्यों? अगर आपको ad नहीं मिले तो आपकी story का कोई value नहीं है. So yeah, definitely there's a big difference between journalism and advertising and marketing and then journalism, but these three are connected in like they intervene. You can't just separate them at all. Journalists may not be affected by them, but definitely our stories have to be in that way that it doesn't harm the business, because that we have seen in the pandemic. If advertisers are not interested in something where their product is not promoted, so you don't have to promote a product in your stories, but the thing is that you don't have to harm somebody's reputation also. And yeah, definitely, but if the story is investigative, then you have to keep in account that you are going to untruth whatever you have got the facts, you've got the figures, you need to put them across, because there's a responsibility which you have towards the society, which you have to actually focus upon. So do mention in your answers when you're putting it, the skill of a journalist is to understand the ethics. What is the ethics for journalist, and what is unethical, and what does our bodies, different bodies who have been assigned to take care of journalists, what are they telling us that this should be written, this should not be written. So many of the journalists actually, when they don't understand ethics, they do mistakes. So if you are talking about magazine journalism, do mention what are the qualities of a good magazine journalist. Definitely, he should be ethical. He should be specialized in these days. Without digital knowledge, you can't do any work. You should be very savvy with the computer, savvy with his phone, because these days half of the interviews are done on your phones only. So, and then there are lots of administrative activities which keep on happening. Now, when you have joined them, when you are into the magazine structure, there's a content of magazines which is very important. You should be understanding. There's a cover story which actually leads a magazine. Every magazine actually carries a cover story. And the importance of a cover page. Cover page, if you will look at it, these are the 3 cover pages which made a major difference in the history of magazine. So if you have a good cover page actually makes a reader go pick up the magazine anyway. That's the first thing. They pick up the magazine because when you look at the cover, you find something interesting. So the cover page normally, well, how do we make it? Is we have good headlines, and that is a point which I've told you, a compulsive feature which makes people buy the magazine. And if the content of doesn't come up to the expectations of the buyer, the magazine doesn't survive. We have seen so many magazines closing down also. So the cover page or the cover story, the cover page has to be very well designed. Cover page. Cover story has to be very well written. It should have solid documents. Whatever you're writing the story on, you should be interviewing lots of people. There should be lots of details. There should be listed of examples, because that will actually make people realize that you have actually done a descriptive article and you have actually done your research and you know the subject very well. People believe or people read those articles only which are very, very well researched. This is a simple content page of a magazine, beautifully done, where you'll see all the angles, and somebody who sees the content page will love to go to the next page. So a content of the magazine, when we talk about, there's an editorial which is written by the editor of the magazine, where he gives his opinion on any of the contemporary, if it's a political magazine on a political issue, if it's a business magazine on a business issue or a legal issue, whatever. The editorial is about the opinion and facts of the editor. Then comes in stories, which could be depending on the magazine, the genre of the magazine. You have human interest, which I told you. There are business magazines, which will cover on the people, places, events. Feature stories, as I told you, are more descriptive. They are more colorful. They are thoughtful. So please, in the examination, if it is a question is, what kind of stories are taken in magazines? Do mention that feature stories are taken up, which are descriptive, colorful, thoughtful. They are reflective because they reflect the ideas of a person. They reflect the personality of the person. And these are the piece of journalistic writing, which are original writing. They're not fictions. So what are the kind of feature stories? News features we have. We have human interest features. We have historical features. We have profiles of personality features. We have photo features. We have reviews. We have columns. All this makes up a complete writing for a magazine. So now, what is the difference between your news story and a feature story? So when we talk about news story, the content which we say is a recent or a breaking news. But in case of feature, it could be any issue. It could be news related, it could be human interest, anything. Because there you're going to give a detailed picture of it. Intro, if it's a news story, you summarize the story in a nutshell, that the budget, every year the budget comes out. The past year budget was like this. But when you write a feature, you actually have an anecdote or you have a human focus on that. If you're writing a story on the changing rape laws or something like that, you actually focus on somebody who actually brought out this change. Then there comes in the sources and the angle. Any kind of story, you can't just carry one story with one source or one angle. Many times you need, for a feature, you need lots of sources, you need lots of angles. In news story, the structure is very clear. It's an inverted pyramid structure, which you have studied when you must have studied editing. That the most important comes up, and then the story flows on. In feature, it's a more flexible kind of a structure we take in. It could be a linear structure or could be a non-linear structure also. That is basically because we are telling a story kind of a thing to people. And in this case, feature, the conclusion is very, very important, because if you don't conclude what happened or what exactly is a government going to is planning or something like that, then the end part, you just can't leave it vague. In news, definitely you just, because you are not giving any opinion, you are not giving any whatever, you're just putting the 5 Ws on one edge, the story without a conclusion also gets completed. So writing for the magazine, when we say, you should read between the lines of magazine article, and you will see that magazine writing is definitely do mention in the examination. That's a factual thing. It is it is based on hard facts. It's not exactly, then it's not a personal opinion, which I told you earlier also. So the common styles which are used by the magazine in the presentation of articles is, one is a narrative writing. You narrate. Then there's a serialized narrative writing. You have narrated one, then you need more narration. You need to explain more, you go further with it. Then the descriptive writing, where you describe a scenic beauty, like for a travel writing. You describe the place, you describe, you've gone to Australia, you will describe about your starting, it could be as simple as that, starting from your journey from airport to the place you're visiting, you describe everything. Persuasive writing, where you actually tell people, yeah, this is happening, and imaginating, where you imagine and then you start on with your this thing. Visual imagination should be with the theme of the story. Visual writing, you start describing something like that. Then there could be multiple inverted pyramids. You're talking about World War One, you're talking about World War Two, you're talking about World War Three, and then you come about with the latest, when they're talking about that now the war, whatever, the Fourth World War or Fifth World War or whatever will happen in the future will be a biological this thing. Then you need to go with the multiple inverted pyramid in this. So the key elements of this writing is, one is definitely elements of storytelling, more details and description, facts and opinions, very strong angle, and it should be structured like an argument. Then make use of all the literary devices available to you. Use Google, use, there are lots of information available on different websites. Use that. Maybe sometimes you could also, to make your article really interesting for people, it could be something, you could use something controversial, but that should be a quote by somebody who is into the industry. Use jargon as much as possible. And can be like, even some of the stories can be told from a personal viewpoint also. Make it run like a movie that people love it. Then give lots of shades, give lots of tones. Do include all this in your examination, this thing, and do look at that part, that because we are more informal in this, and there's something which we say is plays with perspective, that whatever is the latest information, do carry, which I'll explain you in the basics of magazine writing. When the perspective comes in, that's a thing which when we say, know whom you're writing for. That is exactly what I told you about the enticing thing also. Know what, now the thing is that you know, okay, what are their interests, what are their concerns. Now you have to keep into mind one very important thing also, कि उसको पढ़ने के बाद what will a person achieve, and be accurate, be readable in this thing. Keep your sentences very short, and there should be a style. Every writer, a good magazine writer, has a style. So do mention that basis of magazine writing are these pointers, that there should be a vibrant style. And very important is to understand the editorial policy of the publication you're writing, because if you're writing something which the company's editorial policy, you don't come into you are going against that, then definitely your article will be rejected. And then many times the magazine articles or writers, what they do is they have a strong personal opinion. No. Gossipy thing, no. The quality of the content and the style you have to maintain from the beginning of the article to the end. And definitely the words plays a lots of role, and for that you need to go to the dictionary. So do remember, these are the basic magazine writing styles for the examination point of view. So, but the best magazine style is one which is accessible. People are able to go through it lively, which is colorful, which is grabbing, and which is relevant. So now how do you structure a magazine article? You can, this is a simple thing. This is actually, I've taken it from one of the very beautiful stuff where they explain you how to write a thesis or write an essay. So if you just keep this thing in mind also, when you're telling a story, you know what is the beginning, what is the middle, what is the ending. Gradually when you move up, you use it, because first part, the beginning is very important. because that is a part where people will read your article. And this is where you have to grab the attention of your reader, because if your reader loses out you lose your reader in the beginning, there's no point of your middle, there's no point of your ending. So first point you have to keep in mind is that the beginning of it. Then comes is a middle part of it, because then you talk to people, you have quotes, unquotes, and then comes in the ending, which we say is a bang. And when you have written it, very important is the editing part of it. In editing, the first step of editing is which I prefer, which I do quite often, is, and you can also put it across when you are writing in the answer, is there are lots of weak descriptions. And then if you read tips for editing is read your article carefully. Then there are lots of very weak adjective descriptions or adverb descriptions. Very simple one, like you have written very big. You could use huge for that, really bad, terrible, very beautiful, gorgeous. So it's a very simple idea I'm giving you. Whenever you're writing in magazine, you have to be very particular. So when it comes to it, when you're talking, when in the examination, there's a question, what is, you have to keep in view when you're writing a magazine article. Definitely writing is very important, but editing is much, much more, because a good, well-edited article is the one which people love. And if you're repeating your sentences, you're focusing more on something else, then nobody will like it. So if, and then there comes in, if there's an adverb pointing to a weak adjective, जो हम लोग बोलते हैं, आपको अपने sentence को impactful बनाना है. तो what you write is, for scared, terrified लिखिए. When you watch movies nowadays, you will get lots of ideas like this. Nowadays, Netflix series, they give you so many ideas about these things. So when you're writing, do understand when you're watching a series, how do they keep a link? They keep a link by giving you all those words, by giving you those one-liner sentences which keep you hooked to them. Exactly is like that. All these Netflix series are like our magazine articles. Dirty means you could, if you use filthy, will be more impactful. Tired, exhausted. Jahan pe impact pade, that is exactly a good magazine writing. Now, importance of design in magazine is because that is a part which we say plays a very important role in your selling and advising. And magazine design is one which attracts the readers. So how you make a magazine? A very simple one. You need to pick your topic. You choose your title. You choose your cover article. You find your cover image. You design your masthead, which you have done for your NMD also, which you can include all the points of newspaper, paper and magazine designing in. If there's a question on how do you design your magazine, write your body articles, incorporate graphics, decide your feature articles, your thumbnails, you create a table content and a back page. As simple as that. These 10 things, if you remember it, this will be a very simple step for your magazine. And many times this is an answer for your Viva questions also for NMD also. But this is now when we are talking about magazine journalism, this is how you make a magazine, how you design a magazine, what are the different components of a magazine, whether it is an environment magazine, whether it's a business magazine, whether it's a women magazine. Please don't get confused if in the examination they ask you what, how do you design an environment magazine, or what are the different areas which are covered by an environment magazine, or how is a women magazine designed, or whatever it is. Please keep in mind it's the same for every this thing. There's no difference. So don't get confused in that. Now, what is the importance of printing? Printing, because if it's not a good paper quality, your layout is bad, then definitely the whole whatever hard work you have done, that will go into sit. So in examination, you do mention when there's a question on what exactly sells a magazine, or what do you think is the paper quality of magazine, because they use glossy paper for the best image quality. Definitely that will play a very important role. And for that reason, most of the good magazines, they consult the printers on a regular basis about how they should be changing the paper of the magazine to make it more glossy or something like that. Layout. Many times, why do designing is the most important department of a magazine, because if the magazine is not designed according to the nature of the magazine, then, and the layout is not like that, then definitely it will kill the magazine. Look at the full brief thing. So magazines, when we talk about it, they're entertaining. The crux is that your magazine should be entertaining. It should drive your sales, and on paper and screen, both, you should be able to look at it. So the new genre which has come in is an online magazine, which we say is published on the internet. You have lots of ways you can do it. The earlier days, it was used to be done by the bulletin board system and by public computer networks. Now, the Data Mission was the first computer magazine which actually was converted from a print magazine format to online. And then online magazine, now that we have lots of them, what we call them webzines also. So e-zine, also spelled as e-zine, is a form of specialized, which we say a small magazine and newsletter, which you've been seeing lots of times. You get them through emails. There's a very good this thing. If you want to see them, there's a called Zine. Go to that and see that. You'll see lots of these e-zine kind of magazines available there. Nowadays, online magazines, they refer to themselves as electronic magazines. So e-magazine is actually the one which is a term which is being used nowadays when you do your online research on online magazine. So when we look at the future of this, the online magazine, because the cost of the production of the magazine and maintaining the whole was becoming very expensive. So most of the print magazines are now shifting over to the online this thing, and compared to print, the revenue is coming lesser. So moving to the online means now the treatment of journalists is different. Now the journalists are called bloggers, columnists, as compared to earlier we were called correspondents, special correspondents, editors. Uh, Slight change, but yeah, definitely the role we are playing is exactly the similar. But the writing has also changed now as compared to what we call blogs. The kind of writing we were doing, the feature writing which we were doing in the print was slightly different, because here, one, you don't get so much of liberty to write so many words. There you were writing stories for 1,000 words, 1,500 words, 2,000 words. Online, the word limit plays a very, very important role. So then definitely online magazines are very easier to work also, faster to access for a reader also, and then you have to keep up yourself updated also, because in case of print magazines, it used to be monthly, or it used to be weekly, or you had that kind of a periodicity. But here, magazine is being viewed by the reader every day. So online magazine also, the feature is very good feature. Yeah, earlier also we used to be writing the letter to the writer, but now we have lots of social media to interact with these magazines. You interact with them on Facebook, you interact with them on LinkedIn, you interact with them on Twitter, and then you get lots of information. So do magazines still have future? Yes, they do have a future. Print magazines also have a future. Maybe we must have seen a closing down of lots of magazines, but if you look at lots of studies which have been done, what they found is that most of the monthlies are up. People love to read them, and magazines are back on stand. This is a very good data which has been created by What's New Publishing, and they came out with a very good study which said that magazines still have a bright future. And yeah, because one, varied interest. Now people are interested in lots many things, and with lots of gradual transition from what we say is where an article is available on the print media also and the online media also. The people are coming back to prints for one reason, because in-depth reading is much more comfortable on the print medium. So there are lots of resources which you can go through it. But now for the examination pattern, you have that descriptive paper where you have questions as simple as that. It's your first question will be 15 marks, and then it's divided between 8-7, 8-7, 8-7, and then you have a short notes which will be 5 marks. This thing. So do keep into account, go through your syllabus carefully. When you're reading your syllabus, please look at small pointers which are given there. The coverage, how what they're talking about in the thing. Do read some articles which are talking about the status of magazine journalism. How not only magazine journalism, do read what is happening in the field of women magazines, environment magazine, technology magazines. What is environment magazine? If you read all this and if you go through those magazines, it will be easier for you to attempt your questions. More or less focus more on the part that you give examples, focus more on designing, because that is what magazine is made of. Talk about the future. If we are talking about e-magazines, talk about how the things have changed, talk about the content, talk about designing. Your answer will have more weightage. And more or less, if we talk about the magazine journalism paper, do look into the paper with a focus that you are talking about three things. One is talking about content, designing, and then finally looking at the part, what is my reader looking at? If you just keep for examinations, if you keep this thing in focus and write your answers, you'll do lots of. And then what I told you was to, before you attempt this paper, please go through some of the magazines online only. PDFs are available. Please watch them. That will help you a lot. I think this small session would have helped you a lot. Thank you so much. And please read some of the links I'll be sending to the professors, which you can go through those links, which are very effective. And one of these link is very good. I haven't given many because in the exam, you don't need too much. IndiaMags.com has lots of information which you can go through it. Thank you so much. And thank you, Swarna ma'am. Thank you, Deepak sir. And thank you, principal sir, for inviting me for this session. I hope the students will get some information from this.
थैंक यू मैडम, काफी अच्छा सेशन था. मतलब स्टूडेंट के साथ साथ एज ए टीचर करके भी बहुत सारी इंफॉर्मेशन मिली है, बहुत अच्छे से. मतलब एक्स्ट्रा नॉलेज हमको यहाँ से मिला है. तो बच्चे भी अगर यहाँ पे भी थोड़ा सा भी मतलब रीड आज देखा है बच्चों ने और इसके ऊपर और थोड़ा सा फोकस करेंगे तो उनको बहुत अच्छा मैगजीन जर्नलिज्म के पेपर वो बहुत अच्छे से लिख पाएंगे. और आपने बहुत अच्छे से इंफॉर्मेशन दी है मैडम. आप अपने बिजी इतने शेड्यूल में से यहाँ आए हो, यहाँ पे बच्चों को बताए, उसके लिए थैंक यू मैडम.
थैंक यू सो मच.
और एसएसटी कॉलेज की तरफ से मैं बोलूंगी कि हमारे जो फाउंडर प्रिंसिपल है जैसे पुरुषवानी सर और आईक्यूसी कोऑर्डिनेटर खुशबू पुरुषवानी मैडम, उन्होंने भी ये प्लेटफॉर्म अवेलेबल करके दिया. उसके लिए उनका भी तहे दिल से मैं धन्यवाद कहना चाहूंगी.
थैंक यू सो मच. बिकॉज आफ्टर टेकिंग दीज सेशंस मैंने बहुत बड़ी सिर्फ दीज सेशंस ओनली मैंने अपने स्टूडेंट्स को फॉरवर्ड किया है. मुंबई यूनिवर्सिटी के बहुत सारे कॉलेजेस में जहाँ मैं पढ़ाती हूँ, मैं आप ही का लिंक भेज देती हूँ.
हाँ, और आपने जो पीपीटी बनाया है उसमें पूरा सिलेबस मतलब कवर हो चुका है मैडम. अगर बच्चे अच्छे से एक बार देख लेंगे, और मैं भी वो पीपीटी अच्छे से रीड करूंगी कि छोटे छोटे पॉइंट्स वहाँ पे बच्चों को बताए गए हैं, इसलिए स्टूडेंट को बहुत ही अच्छे से यूजफुल होने वाली है. इसके लिए मैडम आपका तहे दिल से थैंक यू.
थैंक यू सो मच मैम. थैंक यू एवरीवन.